Reid Hoffman is one of the most prolific tech entrepreneurs of our time, having co-founded LinkedIn and now investing in the future of society as a partner over at Greylock. Hoffman is also a champion of leadership improvement and just doing things a better way. Joining us now is none other than Reid Hoffman. Reid, always nice to get some time with you. Thank you for doing this conference. We really appreciate it. So let's start in tech. You know, the title of this conference is New Challenges and New Opportunities. And I think for the audience watching this, one of their biggest challenges is understanding what is going on right now in tech. We see stories of layoffs. We see stories of stock prices falling. In your community, what's the mood and what might happen next?
Well, one of the things I love about tech is even in capital challenge times, there's always optimism. And so, yes, obviously, we've had this kind of 10 plus year bull market, lots of investment all over the place. I think part of what you're seeing is this kind of retrenchment, refocusing, saying, okay, we can't do 7 initiatives or 10 initiatives. We can only do 3 or 5. And that's causing some restructure. I think that restructure is very good for the company. It's very good for the industry. I'm not at all worried, actually, ultimately about the vast majority of people's jobs, because I think there's still a lot of capital flowing in to everything from startups to large companies saying, hey, technology is part of the future. There'll be some painful dislocation that obviously we should soften that and make that work as well as possible.
How scarred is tech after a year like this? In many respects, I think from an investor standpoint, many have never seen this type of commentary, this type of vibe.
Well, I think it's always, you'd prefer to just be the kind of the simple heroes, the ride in. We built new product services, new technology. Obviously, as technology has become more fundamental through all walks of society and life, you're part of that kind of conversation and melee, which includes not always like, well, hey, is this stuff you're doing with facial recognition tech? Is that scary or alienating? And what should we be doing with it? Other kinds of things as social media and kind of information systems. These discussions, I think, are good because they're how we figure out what we're doing. And I think, obviously, you compound that with the economics and it's hard, but I think that it's still, kind of fundamentally, like, scarred is, I think, too strong. I think learning, it's kind of what is the kind of old aphorism, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I think actually, in fact, generally speaking, I think what you're seeing is lessons being learned and evolution happening.
What's one of the good lessons?
Well, I think one of the good lessons is to stay very focused. I think one of the things that the 10 plus years of bull market has allowed, kind of like, let's experiment with X, let's experiment with Y, let's experiment with Z, let's just try lots and lots of things. And I think one of the things is say, it is good to innovate, it is good to do new things, but let's go like intensely. It's almost like some of what we learned from Steve Jobs at launching at Apple. It's like, focus on a couple of things that you're launching really intensely and trying to make them as good as possible. And I think that's kind of one of the lessons for investors and executives and employees, and in terms of, don't kind of like spread out like spaghetti all across the field.
You know who seems really focused, Reid, and it's an executive I'm sure you know very well. That's Satya Nadella. Now, he's speaking at our All Market Summit too, but here's someone that is, I think, stayed laser focused. Of course, great brand, but it seems to be doing a lot right in a very challenging environment.
I think that's 100% correct. I mean, Satya is, I think, one of the great executives of our time. I think the kind of ways that he's going, look, Microsoft obviously has tons and tons of opportunity. How do you focus on building and taking what Satya calls, borrowing from the industry terms, Carol Dweck, et cetera, growth psychology to earn your trust with your consumers, trust with your partners, and be very, very focused on that. And so I think one of the things I've had the honor and pleasure of being on the Microsoft board, working with him on this, is to see, kind of like, okay, we're going to do X, we're going to do Y, we're not going to do Z, and we're going to change these other things to being much more limited and focused in terms of how we're operating.
I mentioned on the intro that you are trying to change society, and I really do think you are. Let's start with transportation. And let's start with Convoy Trucking. You were an early investor in that company. Where are they now? What does their valuation look like? And what do their forward plans look like?
Well, just like any public market, well, they're not public, but any kind of scale technology company, valuations are always a little bit more pressed from the reset of the public markets. That's the index of everything. but they're doing a great job. Their shippers kind of find that the flexibility and the use of mobile phones to track and schedule and do everything and to coordinate with the drivers and to be able to get a much larger fleet. A lot of the Convoy drivers are, kind of family owned, 1 to 5 trucks, and to be able to get those into the really good shippers and the good shipping lanes are all working really well. I think they're doing a great job of kind of like, how do they innovate on, and this is one of the funny things from being a software guy, about physical things like, okay, how do we have trailers so that we can drop the trailer off, make it efficient unload, but pick up another trailer and immediately go on to the next job, and programs like that, which are all kind of a funny form of innovation. But of course, we live in the world of atoms, not just in the world of bits. And so those kinds of innovations are also part of what are simple innovations to the efficiency of the whole system.
Another potential winner is Joby, a company you're very familiar with, an early backer there as well. I know they're not helicopters, but take us through this play and what are they trying to disrupt? And when might we actually see these flying over our heads sometime?
Well, I hope within a few number of years. Joby's now a public company, so reports on all the stuff in the schedules and in its public filings. And it's funny because part of your questions are revealing like I've become somewhat of a not just the how do we transform the network of professionals with LinkedIn, or the network of travel with Airbnb, but also now the network of transport, because you got Convoy with trucks, but you also got like how do we take how we're working with cities and make them 3D, so that now, as opposed to like how do you get to the airport in a environmentally friendly way, not with the vagaries of traffic, and how do you essentially add this third dimension to commuting, to to and from the airport, to and from other transport, across places where bridges would otherwise be kind of super tight and have like these traffic congestion points. How do you ease all this up? Because by the way, as you begin to get the kind of the flying in these electric cars, the Jetsons, helicopters, in an environmentally friendly way, it will also help everybody because of the ease of congestion. And so, obviously, I'm looking forward to being able to ride in one. We're still in a place where it's only test pilots, but they're super quiet and they're super safe.
So the goal is there to create an Uber for the skies.
Yes, exactly.
So I know AI is very near and dear to your heart. Elon Musk, he's trying to roll out, you know him, he's a good friend of yours, trying to roll out these robots, I think Optimus robots, to just help make things, I would imagine, faster. Is that a reality? Are we looking at a future where the factory floors are things that look like me, just in robot form?
I think that's a when, not an if. Although I also am a great optimist on how a lot of the kind of AI technologies are actually going to be human amplifying. I mean, we already see this as you automate factories more. There's a lot more jobs for humans as well. Now, obviously, the productivity goes up of like, for example, in Amazon and sort of package coming out of the factory per kind of per human being there. And so you up productivity. That's, of course, how productivity is generated and society benefits from it. But I think there will be a lot of roles for humans, too. But I do think this kind of humanoid robot, once you're beginning to get the software right and all the AI and the things that like OpenAI and Microsoft and other folks are working on, that will actually, in fact, create great enhancements and amplifications on the factory floor as well.
What are the dangers to having this type of technology walking around?
Well, I don't think people normally kind of worry about things like kind of like military, like autonomous weapons and that kind of thing. And I actually think those worries are not as significant, are not the real worries. I think the real worries are hands of AI and bad actors, cybersecurity, other kinds of things like that, as the kind of key things. So on the humanoid robots, I think the real question is, how do we transition as society? Just like when we move from agriculture into manufacturing, and now we have 4% of the workforce in agriculture where it used to be 80%, how the workforce will begin to transform again when you have these kind of AI amplifiers in manufacturing and other kinds of things, and robot amplifiers. what does that new world look like, and what does the transition look like? Because the transition from agriculture to manufacturing in the cities was actually quite painful. Hopefully we can learn from history and make that easier and less challenging.
Let's dive into, before we run out of time, on leadership, another topic that you are very, very passionate about. I follow your LinkedIn page extremely closely. I really enjoy your posts on this, but what are you telling the next generation of leaders now? The companies that you are invested in, they have had a challenging year. 2023 is shaping up to potentially be challenging, at least in the first half. What's the best advice you're giving them?
Well, it's roughly around the things of take the challenges and convert them, which are painful. You wouldn't have necessarily selected them, and convert them into making your company stronger, making your relationship and trust with your customers stronger. So you do kind of restructures and you do refocusing early in it. You bring your company along. If you have to do a reduction in force, you do it compassionately. I think Brian Chesky at Airbnb has shown how to do that. Kind of as one really, really good example. And what you do is you don't do it as a, like the market's doing us to this, or you do this as this is our chance to learn and be better and stronger as an organization, and as we play a role for our customers and society.
When you talk to folks, do you see mistakes popping up, that there's a common thread of things that they shouldn't be doing in this environment, but are now starting to creep up?
Well, some of it is is only playing defense versus offense. So only kind of worrying about like the downside as opposed to how do you strengthen. Another is sometimes making changes too late and kind of just hoping that, because, look, the market will, in the future return to kind of, after you kind of this kind of contraction will return to, paying attention to the future, and technology swings more intensely with that to both positive on the upside and more challenged on the downside. And that will happen, but make the decisions early. Not doing it in as a compassionate way, which is to say, how do you say, whether it's Brian Chesky or Reed Hastings or others, how do you say this as compassionately to employees and families as you're making these changes as possible? Those are kind of, I'd say, standard things that people should pay attention to in this. And then obviously the specifics depend on the specific company, the specific industry, the specific people.
Lastly, Reid, one question from the Yahoo Finance ecosystem that they were curious about from you. LinkedIn, in its present form, is this what you always imagined it to be?
Well, I'd say we're still on journey to what I imagined it to be. And Ryan Roslansky and the team are great innovators and leaders of this. I think we're just at the beginning steps of how like learning plays into it. We're at the beginning steps of how do you use your network to get news and information in addition to kind of job opportunities and recruits and sales. I think we're just at the very beginning days. And matter of fact, just 2 weeks ago, I was chatting with Ryan about some interesting things about like what we might do next year, the year after. And so I'd say my hope is the best is yet to come.
Do you want to share them?
Can't, unfortunately.
Fair enough. Well, Reid Hoffman, we will leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. We greatly appreciate it. You're always gracious with the folks here at Yahoo Finance. We'll talk to you soon.
Great. Thank you.